From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. A top UN inquiry has found Israel guilty of genocide in Gaza, citing mass killings, starvation, and destruction of healthcare. This and more in today's show, so stay tuned. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly told President Donald Trump about plans to strike Hamas leaders in Qatar earlier this month before the missiles were launched. U.S. news site Axios cites Israeli officials saying that Netanyahu called Trump around 8 a.m. Washington time to brief him. Explosions in Qatar's capital Doha were reported less than an hour later. The White House claims that Trump was only told after the attack began and there was no chance to stop it. But Israeli officials say the call happened earlier and claims that if Trump had objected, Israel would have canceled the operation. The strike in Doha killed 5 Hamas leaders and a Qatari security officer. It triggered worldwide condemnation, including from Trump himself, who later said he was very unhappy about the incident. Netanyahu has continued to describe the strike as a unilateral Israeli action, despite claims suggesting U.S. awareness in advance. Qatar became the 7th country attacked by Israel in the last year, besides Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iran, and Tunisia. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has admitted that Israel is facing global isolation. Speaking at a finance ministry event in Jerusalem, he warned that arms embargoes and sanctions are tightening after what he called Israel's war in Gaza. Netanyahu said Israel may need to build an economy of self-sufficiency, which includes developing its own weapons industries. He also blamed Muslim immigration in Europe for shaping Western leaders' policies, saying Muslim minorities, though not a majority, are vocal and combative and able to pressure governments. The Israeli leader also accused Qatar and China of driving anti-Israel narratives through media campaigns, bots, and TikTok. He claimed these influence operations are turning public opinion against Israel and fueling sanctions. Several countries, including Britain, Spain, Italy, Belgium, Canada, and the Netherlands, have restricted arms trade with Israel. Britain's Royal College of Defense Studies banned Israeli students. Spain's leader called for Israel's suspension from global sports. Business leaders also warned that cutting off trade will damage every Israeli citizen's quality of life. The UN's top investigative body on Palestine and Israel on Tuesday ruled that Israel is guilty of the crime of genocide in Gaza. The 72-page report by the UN Commission of Inquiry on Palestine and Israel found that Israel has committed 4 of the 5 acts prohibited under the 1948 Genocide Convention. It says that Israeli leaders had the intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza as a group. The document also notes that Israel deliberately killed tens of thousands of Palestinians, imposed starvation, destroyed healthcare, and targeted civilians. Gaza's life expectancy collapsed by 35 years in 1 year. Israel wiped out entire families, bombed hospitals, attacked aid convoys, and shot civilians who were in line waiting for food. The commission stressed that genocide is a state crime. Israel was found guilty of committing, inciting, and failing to punish genocidal acts. It said Israel must end military operations, dismantle the blockade, allow aid, and make reparations. The commission also reminded other countries of their obligations. It said governments supplying weapons or political cover to Israel risk complicity. The inquiry urged countries to suspend arms sales, reassess alliances, and support International Criminal Court and International Court of Justice, or ICJ, action, including sanctions on Israeli leaders. The finding echoes reports by Palestinian, Israeli, and international rights groups that have reached the same conclusion over the past year. Israeli soldiers killed at least 78 Palestinians in airstrikes across Gaza since dawn Tuesday. Residents of Gaza City reported heavy, relentless bombardment as Israeli forces expanded their ground assault. Medics say 20 bodies were pulled from the rubble of destroyed homes. The health ministry confirmed 59 bodies and 386 injured were brought to hospitals in the past 24 hours. The ministry also said hunger deaths due to Israel's months-long ongoing blockade of food and humanitarian aid to Gaza climbed to 428, including 146 children. Israeli soldiers wounded more than 112 people seeking aid in the past day. Since May, Israel and American mercenaries have killed at least 2,497 Palestinians seeking food and aid, including children. Israel's army is trying to force civilians to move south, promising food and medical care, but most of Gaza City's 1 million residents remain. Israel has killed over 64,000 Palestinians, most of them women, children, and civilians, since the start of its genocide in Gaza in October 2023. Thousands more are believed to be under rubble. A new study has found widespread self-censorship among German academics researching Israel and Palestine. A Free University of Berlin survey of about 2,000 scholars revealed that 76% hold back their views on Israel-related issues. Most avoid speaking openly at public events and in media outlets. Nearly 85% said academic freedom in Germany is under growing threat since Israel's genocide in Palestine. Postdoctoral researchers reported the sharpest concern, with more than 90% alarmed. More than a quarter of respondents said they often feel unable to speak freely. The study linked the silence to fears of hostility, accusations of anti-Semitism, or professional consequences. Many reported canceled events, online hate, and exclusion from institutions. Since October 2023, authorities have banned protests and canceled university panels, citing anti-Semitism risks. Observers say the measures wrongly equates criticism of Israeli policies with anti-Semitism, stifling legitimate debate. President Donald Trump is on board with designating Antifa a domestic terror organization following a rise in left-wing violence. The Center Square asked the president Monday in the Oval Office if he would designate the group a domestic terror organization. This is following a spate of political violence, including the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk last week. Antifa, short for anti-fascist, is a left-wing political group that has taken root across the country, especially in the Pacific Northwest. It has been blamed for violent protests, in some cases involving government buildings. Trump also said he'd consider designating other groups, but wouldn't say which ones. He said he's talked with Attorney General Pam Bondi about bringing federal RICO charges against some of these organizations and their donors. Trump made the comments during an event to announce a crime emergency in Memphis, Tennessee. Several members of his administration, including Bondi, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, Department of War Secretary Pete Hegseth, and FBI Director Kash Patel, were present. The president briefly asked the group, specifically Attorney General, for approval of the proposal, to which she nodded in agreement. Indian Muslim comedians are gaining global fame, but at home, many face censorship, threats, and bias, turning comedy into quiet resistance. Details after the break, so stay tuned. A Republican lawmaker has filed a resolution to censure Congresswoman Ilhan Omar over her comments following the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk last week. Representative Nancy Mace said Omar mocked the killing and called for her removal from the Education and Workforce and Budget committees. Omar has strongly rejected the charge. She said her remarks were taken out of context and that she found Kirk's death mortifying. In an interview, she pointed out that Kirk had downplayed slavery and opposed Juneteenth, but she insisted she did not celebrate his death. Omar later posted that her heart breaks for Kirk's wife and children, stressing that her faith teaches empathy and peace. She accused Republicans of twisting her words to vilify the left while ignoring President Donald Trump's daily promotion of hate. Trump has called Omar disgraceful and a loser. A federal lawsuit accuses U.S. immigration authorities of abusing West African migrants during a deportation flight to Ghana. 4 migrants, supported by the group Asian Americans Advancing Justice, filed the case last week. The complaint says 5 men, 3 Nigerians and 2 Gambians, were taken from a Louisiana detention facility on September 5th, shackled and loaded onto a U.S. military plane. They were flown to Ghana without being told their destination. According to the lawsuit, 4 of the men were strapped in straitjackets for 16 hours and given only bread and water. Lawyers say the men already won legal relief protecting them from deportation to their home countries. But the Trump administration used Ghana as a transit hub to bypass the rulings. The case highlights the Trump administration's third country deals with African nations that allow deportations regardless of personal ties there. Advocates warn the policy puts migrants at risk of grave harm. A Yale University study warns that new tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump may push between 650,000 and 875,000 more Americans into poverty. The analysis released by the Yale Budget Lab says tariffs will raise household costs by about $2,300 a year as consumer prices climb. The U.S. tariff rate now stands at 17.4%, its highest since 1935. Economists caution that while incomes may stay steady, higher prices will hit food, energy, and shelter hardest. Government programs such as Social Security adjust with inflation, but the safety net may not be enough. The Consumer Price Index rose 2.9% over the past year, marking a steady increase since April. Economists say many companies will pass tariff costs directly to shoppers. Trump defends the tariffs as a way to revive U.S. manufacturing and cut the trade deficit, but experts warn the poorest Americans will pay the price. Indian Muslim comedians are drawing big crowds at home and abroad while navigating identity and censorship at home. Zakir Khan recently made history with a sold-out Hindi show at Madison Square Garden in New York, capping his blockbuster career. But younger comics in India like Rahman Khan, Adil Rahman, and Sumaira Sheikh are also making waves with jokes about biryani, street life, and stereotypes. However, they say that behind the punchlines lies tension. Rahman says he has toned down political jokes after shows were cancelled. He moved to the Indian city of Bangalore after facing hecklers and notes that Muslim comics often face threats, bias, and boycotts. But despite the hurdles, they continue their work, seeing laughter as survival and a form of quiet defiance. A Canadian tribunal has ruled that photos of a Muslim woman without her hijab do not qualify as intimate images under British Columbia law. The Civil Resolution Tribunal dismissed her claim for damages under the Intimate Images Protection Act. The woman argued that her ex-husband shared 13 photos of her unveiled with court officials, which she said violated her faith and privacy. Tribunal Vice Chair Andrea Ritchie reviewed the images and said they do not show nudity or sexual activity. She ruled that unveiled photos, while personally sensitive, do not meet the legal definition of intimate images. Other claims under the Province of British Columbia's Privacy Act and Canada's Charter were not considered, with the tribunal citing lack of jurisdiction. Southern California has lost a prominent Muslim and Black community leader. 55-year-old Omar Hakim Day died last week. The cause of death is not known. Born and raised in Compton, Hakim Day overcame early years in a street gang and went on to dedicate his life to service. He chaired the board of LA Voice, founded the social impact group Encourage, and led the Ilm Foundation. He also created Humanitarian Day, one of the largest Muslim-led charity events for unhoused people. At age 28, he converted to Islam and became a student of Imam Sadiq Safir, helping build Islah LA into a hub for inner-city youth and families. Known as a mentor and bridge builder, Hakim Day worked across faiths, engaging Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and secular communities. Friends say his message was always clear: serve others, stay hopeful, and don't leave your post. Kyrgyzstan has launched a new state-funded Islamic academy in the town of Tokmak, about 35 miles east of its capital, Bishkek. The academy, established by presidential decree, can host 400 students. It will train imams and offer courses in Islamic theology, finance, and banking. The launch comes as the government tightens regulation of religious life. New amendments signed in January ban coercion in conversions, foreign-funded religious activity, and face coverings in public offices. Kyrgyzstan currently has more than 3,500 mosques and 220 religious schools, mostly in the southern Osh region. At the opening ceremony on Monday, President Sadir Japarov said the academy aims to provide scientifically grounded religious education rooted in Islamic values. He said the academy will also counter extremism and radicalism by its scientific temper. Japarov urged Kyrgyz youth to study religion at home instead of seeking education abroad. Salt, ice, and a little pressure can create electricity. Scientists writing in Nature Materials say they generated current by bending salted ice. A single cone-shaped piece, smaller than a peppercorn and made of ice with 25% salt, produced about 1 millivolt. An array of 2,000 cones could light a small red LED. The effect is called flexoelectricity, where electricity is made when a solid is deformed. But practical use of the discovery is far off, as scientists say powering a smartphone today would require salty ice the size of a large room. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. Please donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Salam.